Rev up your engines!
Tesla is making a factory in Shanghai, China to make the Model 3 electric cars, and it seems that he's even ahead of schedule. From what I've read, they seem to be able to get production started in December of this year. That was his whole underpinning, was the Model 3, because it's a cheaper one, not the $100,000 one, but they're trying to sell them for $30-something thousand. They tried making them in the United States. They had problems with them. The mechanization of the factory wasn't right. They built some of them in the parking lot in tents. So it wouldn't surprise me at all that he ends up moving the large bulk of his production to China and then shipping them back over here, which is kind of against the whole idea of, making something in the United States for American jobs and all that. He saw the handwriting on the wall and saw that, hey, maybe he can't make these things economically in the United States and he's got to go to China and make them. He's going to have to import a lot of stuff to build it there, but of course it's just so much cheaper to make it in China than it is in the United States. Only time will tell, but they say that it could be December that they start making the things in China. The Model 3 Teslas. Andrew Garcia 10. Scotty, I got a 2014 Ford Focus SC hatchback. My car tends to slip in first gear. Notoriously weak transmissions in those things. If it goes okay otherwise, and you go to Ford and they're not going to fix anything free, I would personally live with it. But I would check. I believe there's a class action lawsuit going on for those. If there is, join the class action lawsuit, because there might be a deal where you'll get paid and you can put another transmission in or get a bunch of money back, and then when it does break, buy a different car that's better made. That was a notorious problem with those things, that they were just poorly made. Josh D. Scotty is a 2001 Subaru Forester, a good first car. I found one in my area for $1,100. All right, $1,100 is nothing for a car. Subarus, as I've always tell people, have problems in two main areas. They blow the head gaskets of the engines because of those boxer engines, and their automatic transmissions are weak. If you find that for $1,100 and you drive it around and it runs good, it's not smoking out the tailpipe, might be a decent car. If you get that, even if it lasts only a year, you're still making out like a gangbuster, because the price of running a car, when you include everything, is over $8,000 a year in the United States. So if you bought that for $1,100, even if it only lasts you a year, you're coming out pretty good. P.925 Scotty, my 300 threw a check engine code for a bad thermostat. I drove it 2 weeks and the light went off. Heck, I would say just go change your thermostat. Thermostats are just a round device. They go into thermostat housing, and they're closed when the engine's cold, so the engine warms up, and the hot water stays in the engine and doesn't go through the radiator. Once they reach a certain temperature, they open up, and then they flow. Well, yours could have been stuck open or stuck closed, but then they can open again the whole way if they're closed, or closed if they were stuck open, because they're mechanical parts. Just change the thermostat. It's a cheap enough thing. I mean, if your temperature gauge works right and you don't care, you can leave it alone. But, I'd change it anyways, because what happens if one day it does stick closed, then your car will overheat. You don't want that. It's not that big of a deal changing them out anyways. My name is Will. I believe my head gasket's starting to fail. I don't have any water or steam coming out the back. How can I tell? Okay, I've got a video, how to tell if your head gasket is blown. You can buy that block leak test from Amazon for like $30 and do it yourself if you want. It's a very simple test. When the engine's cold, you just take the radiator cap off and you stick the little test tube plastic thing over the hole, put this blue liquid in, you start the car up. If the blue liquid turns yellow, you got a blown head gasket. It's a very simple test. And see, when they start to blow, that test will show it, because it'll bubble. And sometimes it won't even turn from blue to bright yellow. It'll turn blue to maybe light green. And that shows that it's just starting to blow. When it really steams, it's really blown. And when you get water and the oil mixed, then it's really blown. But this test is great for seeing when it's starting to go. And then you can decide, do I want to rebuild the engine or just sell the car and get another one? Van Akram. Scotty, is it possible to replace the transmission using a non-CV transmission in a CVT of supplied car? Well, anything's possible, but I wouldn't try it, because everything, the computer runs the engine and the transmissions, it's correlated. You'd have different sensors, you'd have different computer software that runs the car, and you'd have different mounts, they're different shaped transmissions. I wouldn't do it. It would be a royal pain in the rear end. I've seen guys do just about everything on cars. Cadillacs that had Mercedes engines put in them, but the guys that did it spent a lot of time and energy doing it. And most of the time, it's not worth doing something like that. If you got a bad CVT transmission, either fix capacitor. Get rid of the car and get something else. Same thing with, I've seen guys, they want to put a standard transmission in an automatic transmission car. It's the same thing. It's such a headache to do. Samuel 87. I just bought a 2004 Chevy Cavalier with 266,000 miles on it. When I press on the gas, the car kind of hesitates at times. What could it be? If you have no check engine light on, then it's not some kind of an obvious sensor. Now, if it is a check engine light on, yeah, definitely get it scanned, see what the code is, and fix that. But if your check engine light isn't coming on, that is a 16-year-old Chevy with 266,000 miles. The most common thing is either your fuel filter is clogged, so change that, or the fuel pump is weak. Now, you can't just test the fuel pump without changing the fuel filter first, because if the fuel filter is clogged, it can give a false reading and you'd put in an expensive pump and maybe it's just a clogged filter. So try the filter first. But if the filter doesn't fix it, then you put a gauge on and you pressure test the fuel pump. And if it's weak, replace it. Now, on that old thing, the computer has no idea what the fuel pressure is. So if you have low fuel pressure, it won't trip any codes. So if you got no check engine light and it hesitates, it's often a weak fuel pump on one of those. Welly Jesus, I got a 2000 Mustang. My turn signals don't work properly. I tried bulbs, they didn't fix it. What could it be? All right, turn signals are relatively simple devices. You got the turn signal stalk. When you push it up, it puts the switch on, sends power to the turn signal relay, which then sends power to the lights to make it go on, off, because they're relays. So, if you check the bulbs are okay. If you don't have ground power, they won't work. You get bad ground wires. But often it's just the stupid turn signal relay. We used to call them turn signal flashers, but now they call them turn signal relays. And you can go to any place like AutoZone and say, can you sell me a relay, show me where it is? And they can show you where it is, and you just unplug it and plug a new one in. Now, if it isn't that, then normally it's the turn signal assembly going to the steering column that's bad. It's kind of a pain in the butt. You got to take the steering column all apart to replace that. You can do it. It's doable. But you're going to have to disconnect the airbags if you got airbags if it's a newer car. So a lot of people don't want to mess with airbags. They're afraid they're going to blow up. Sometimes they do. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.